have a rather long paper, but I'm going to cut short my presentation. I came from faraway land, halfway around the world, from Philippines. We are 5 hours advanced in your time zone. But anyway, the title of my paper is Self-Criticism as a Response to the Challenge of Secularization to Religion. First, I'll follow this outline of my presentation: secular world, then the medieval world of Christianity, the challenge of modern thought, 2 understandings of God in contemporary period, and then the last part will be self-criticism as a response to secularization. There was a time in my country during the Holy Week when there were more people in the church attending the activities commemorating the Passion, Death, and Resurrection of Christ. In the Philippines, the only predominantly Catholic country in the Southeast Asia, a Holy Week is a major religious holiday starting on Palm Sunday until Easter Sunday. Families go home to their respective provinces to observe the Holy Week, a week-long commemoration spent mostly in prayers and reflection. But now that has changed. Although there are still more people going to the church, there are also more people planning their vacation, going abroad or in some local tourist destinations, spending days in the beach or go shopping during the Holy Week. In a country where the influence of the Catholic Church is still strong and where religion has always been a part of the social and political life, and where religious values are embedded in the daily life, the secular tendencies are becoming very strong. And such secular tendencies, as manifested in the attitude of people during the Holy Week, which is supposedly a religious affair or event, are posing some challenges to the religious values of people. The secular ideal has impacted on many aspects of life in the Philippines, especially in the political aspect, where there is a constant conflict between the state and the church. But the challenge of secularization is very much felt in the realm of religious values. Definitely, the world has become modern, and we can say that it is arguably much better than the past in terms of convenience. The modern world has advanced in terms of business and economics, technology, science, and communication. In terms of our living condition, we have enjoyed more comforts and convenience. Indeed, when we look at the modern world, everything seems to be fine and moving forward. Everything seems to be fast and easy. The world is now full of excitement, especially for those who are engaged in the social media. The social media has connected us with almost everyone in the planet. We can witness what is going on in other parts of the world in real time. We can witness, but while the modern world has brought us advancement, comfort, and convenience, it has also created a culture of materialism, consumerism, and individualism. We now put more importance on culture or material things, gadgets, fancy clothes, tablet, or expensive cars and accessories. We can no longer go out without our smartphones or tablets, wallets, and other accessories. We can go for things that are easy and instant. Instant food, instant drinks, and even instant friends. Those we have just met on social media. Many things are measured by individual and economic interest and benefit. In short, the world has become modern, and it has also become secular. We have observed that the more society modernizes, the level of its religiosity becomes less. The dominance of science, politics, and economics in rational discourses, and the relevance of technology, the ideology of globalization, and the attitude of commercialism or materialism. Our religious beliefs, practices, and values and institutions are losing their relevance to human life and society. Due to modernization, the role of religion diminishes. Societies whose religious values are historically embedded in their social institutions are continuously moving away from the religious roots towards a non-religious orientation. But what is secularization, or what is secularism? Such phenomenon of moving towards a non-religious or secular orientation is what we call secularization. Secularization is a phenomenon based on a philosophical stance which affirms the difference and separation of the religious or sacred from the secular or the temporal. Secularism stresses that religious orientation and consideration must be kept out of temporal or public affairs and vice versa. Religion should not influence public and political affairs, as they are two distinct spheres. However, while there is no strict definition of secularization, according to Moman, there are 5 ways of looking at secularization. First is the decline of popular involvement in institutionalized religion. This can be seen in the decline of church attendance, with fewer marriages, baptisms, and funerals being performed under religious auspices. Second is the loss of prestige of religious institutions and symbols, and the decline in influence of religious organization. Third is the separation of society from the religious world, so that religion becomes purely a personal matter. Next is the loss of this idea of the sacred. As science increases, our understanding of humanity and of the world, the area of mystery in the supernatural also decreases. And lastly, religious groups themselves are increasingly becoming concerned with the things of this world rather than the spiritual world. But the question is, how did we get here? What brought us here? Allow me to give a short historical background of secularization. First, the medieval world of Christianity. At the end of the dominance of Greek philosophy, Christianity made its appearance and established itself in the Western world as the one true religion revealed by God and announced to men by Jesus Christ. The early Christian philosophy, which is primarily based on Platonic doctrines, complemented with the divine revelation and interpreted reality as a creation of the divine being. During the early part of the Middle Ages, through the Christian thinkers who were mostly clerics, a theocentric understanding of reality prevailed in the Western world. Reality was understood in terms of the theos, and the world was understood in terms of the spiritual doctrines and principles. The person of God created the natural or physical world and predestined its course and governed it through the natural law, which is based on the divine law. Social, moral, and political aspects of life are understood in the context of the spiritual. The end of human life is the eternal salvation in the next world. Based on its Judaistic roots, Christianity teaches that there is no God, no other God, but Yahweh, the Creator, the Giver of life, the one that sustains all creation. God is at the center of human existence and of human life. He enters into a relation and communicates with his people, giving them protection and guidance. In return, he demands worship and obedience. So, historically, the development of Christianity cannot be separated from its intimate relation with philosophy, particularly during the early period of the Middle Ages until the flourishing of scholasticism. The basic doctrines of Christianity are primarily based on the teachings of Christ, who Christians believe is the Son of God, and his teachings are also the will of God, or Yahweh. The sources of Christian doctrines are the scriptures, which are revelatory in character, and the sacred traditions. Only later in the history of Christianity did early Christians sought for a rational foundation of the Christian faith. That's why we see philosophy providing for the rational foundation of the Christian faith. I will skip this part. Now, the challenge of the modern thought. The early 15th century, after the advent of the Renaissance, which would challenge the prevailing theocentric understanding of reality propounded by the Middle-aged thinkers, particularly the scholastics. The 15th and 16th centuries constituted a period for radical social and political intellectual developments, explorations of the world, the Reformation, which emphasis on individual faith, rise of commercial urban society, dramatic appearance of new ideas in all areas of culture. And all this, with all its parts, move in accordance with strict laws, without purpose or will. The aim of human life is no longer conceived as preparation for salvation in the next world, but rather the satisfaction of people's natural desires. Political institutions and ethical principles cease to be regarded as reflections of the divine command and came to be seen as practical devices created by humans. The ideals of the Renaissance were further solidified during the Enlightenment period. This vast intellectual movement, which began the close of the Flemish Revolution till the end of the French Revolution, ushered a series of changes in European thought and letters, promising a new culture developed under the guidance of reason or the good sense. This new culture developed under the guidance of reason was a radical contrast to the past pages or past ages, particularly the Middle Ages. The proponents of the Enlightenment considered the Middle Ages as a product of philosophical and religious prejudices at that time, failed to use the light of reason. So the main components of Enlightenment, which is based on the Renaissance conception, paved the way for the secular view of reality. So first, there is the universe interpreted as fundamentally rational and follow mechanical laws. There's no need to refer to God as the creator and author of the laws that govern it because it can be understood using reason. Second, the truth need not be referenced to God because it can be arrived at through empirical observation, based on reason and systematic thought. Third, human experience, particularly sense experience, is the foundation of human understanding and truth. Authority, especially religious authority, must not be preferred over experience because through experience that we attain fuller view of reality. And lastly, all human life, both social and individual, can be understood in the same way that the natural world can be understood. So, historically, we can say that secularism started with the beginning of the modern era, the Renaissance, and gained momentum during the Enlightenment period. Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau challenged the authority of the church and religion, and modern theorists like Marx, Freud, and Weber further stressed the decreasing relevance of religion to human and societal affairs. Consequently, religion, or secularism, has gradually pervaded the influence of the Christian world, and in the 19th century, we have the spread of secularism in the other parts of the world. I will skip some of these parts. Now, two understanding of God in the contemporary period. The Renaissance and Enlightenment thinkers did not dismiss religion and the idea of God altogether, because religion is part of human life, and man will always have his own understanding or some sort of belief in a God. Theirs is an alternative explanation to the idea of God and religion, an explanation that challenges the medieval understanding of God based on revelation in the scriptures and the spiritual interpretation of religion. Religion is no longer understood in terms of faith, scriptures, and revelation. So while God can still be conceived, it is no longer at the center of our personal, social, cultural, and even political life. What emerged in the contemporary period are two different understandings of God, and consequently of religion. So the first interpretation, or the first understanding, is the God of the philosophers. In the long history of human thought, philosophers have discussed about the nature of God, and some have come up with their own respective arguments for God's existence. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle in ancient times, Augustine, Albert the Great, Aquinas, and other medieval thinkers. Descartes, Leibniz, Spinoza, Kant, Hegel in contemporary period. Various ideas about God were propounded. In contemporary period, many thinkers have also expressed their views about God, some proclaiming his greatness and some pronouncing his non-existence, even his death. But the question is, what God are they talking about? What is this God that they define, proclaim, or dismiss, or deny? Is this God that they are talking about a mere substance, an object, a concept? Or is it just a product of man's imagination, some kind of a mental construct or illusion? One general philosophical conception of God is that he is a substance, and that he exists in reality like any other being, only that he is no ordinary being because he is infinitely powerful and he is the cause of everything. And we can find this in the works of Spinoza in Ethics, who define God as a being absolutely infinite, a substance consisting of infinite attributes, of which two names, of which one expresses eternal and infinite essence. So, but Spinoza describes God for the qualities of personhood. Well, God in Christianity is considered to be a being who thinks, wills, initiates, makes choices. The God of Spinoza is neither intellect nor will. Also, the anthropological conception of God is conceived. God is a product of human imagination. And we see Ludwig Feuerbach saying that the mystery of religion is that man projects his being into objectivity. Then again makes himself an object to this projected image of himself that's converted into a subject. Marx also contends that God is a man-made invention and that religion is nothing but an opium of the people, used by the ruling class to make people feel better and prevent them from knowing that they are just being exploited. Nietzsche claims that the belief in God arose because we are unable to have faith in ourselves, and so we need to project something out there to which we can cling on. And God's existence is an ideology, one of our most persistent illusions. Then, of course, we have Sartre saying that although in the past man has maintained a relationship with God, that God has spoken to us before, that God is now silent. The God that man previously believed is a self-concealing God, we might as well forget this God. Now, the second understanding is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And this is expressed by Blaise Pascal in his memorial when he said, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and not the God of the philosophers and the learned. Now, this is something very critical to our faith. The God of our faith will be different from the God of our knowledge. There are certainly philosophers who integrated the God of their faith in the God of their knowledge, so that we cannot say that the God of the philosopher is totally a different God from the God of Abraham, of Isaac, or of Jacob. St. Augustine, St. Thomas, John Paul II, and the many other philosopher saints integrated reason and faith, so that for them, the God that they understand and believe in is one and the same God. But if we just focus on the God that we can talk about, and not the God that we can talk to, then there is something missing in our understanding of God, the living God. So, God is not an idea or an image. He's a person we can talk to, we pray to. If some philosophers have reduced God to the concept of illusion or mere image, it's because that God that they considered has been confined to what Buber would call a subject-object relation. The conception of God as an illusion or a mental construct or a concept or just an image or being or a silent God reduces that God to just a thing, an object or an image. The God believed by the Jews and proclaimed by Christ or by Muhammad is not an illusion, nor a product of imagination, nor just a concept or an image. God is a living divine being whom we can talk to, a God whom we can relate to, the God whom we communicate and depend on. There are many people who talk about God, but they never talk to God. Because of this, what we have now is what Buber again would call an eclipse of God. The problem is that human thought has been saturated by God talks of the philosophers. And these God talks of the philosophers who never even talk to God has caused the disappearance of the real God. It has caused what, according to Buber, would be an eclipse of God. A phenomenon or situation where the real God has been concealed because of the various and often contrasting views or conception about God. So there's a need to proclaim the real God, the God who we encounter in our real life in concrete living relation in the fullness of our existence. We need to distinguish the living God from the God of the philosophers, the images, or the ideas, the pseudo-gods that reason not only in the context of this recent phenomenon of secularism, but also in the context of the conception of philosophers about God. Let me now go to the last part of my presentation. On the basis of how secularization and secularism develop or evolve, we can now respond to the challenge of it to our religion. Understandably, as the modern world becomes secular, questions arise as to how we should deal with the advance of secular ideals. How do we respond to this challenge of secularization? Should we be critical of the modern society for being secular, for embracing the secular ideals? Should we be critical of some philosophers who advance a different conception of God? Now, one way, the natural reaction would be to brace ourselves for this challenge, to secure our values and beliefs, and our worldviews from this phenomenon. One way of reacting or responding to this is to defend our positions and to offer counter-arguments against a claim of secularism, or even a counter-conception to what the other philosophers say. But if we have to critique the modern society, then we should also be critiquing the modern man. And the modern man includes the believer. What I think would be a more sincere and appropriate response to secularization is to take the claims of secularism and expression of secularization and examine our own beliefs and values against their position. So it is not a question addressed to the unbeliever or to the skeptic or to the proponent of secularization, but rather it's a question addressed to us or to me as a believer. Do we still have the right understanding of who God is? Is God still the center of our life? Is God still the source of value and meaning of existence? Do we still have and practice the right faith? Is religion still valuable in our life? Is religion still focused on the spiritual life of man, or has it become more secular in its practice? Is the church or institutionalized religion still faithful to its basic teachings? We may still have faith in God, but the question is, who is this God that we believe in? That God may no longer be the central figure in our social and personal life. The practice of religion may have been commercialized, in that the faithful no longer see spiritual significance of a religious event, but only its commercial and practical value. Before we can respond to the challenge of secularization, we need to take a hard look at ourselves and see if indeed religion and our religious beliefs and values have lost their religious relevance and are no longer applicable in our life, both in our personal and social affairs. Now, this would mean going back to the basic teachings of our faith, most especially our understanding of God. But as we keep an understanding, we need to profess our faith profess our faith, a living faith, that is manifested in our thoughts, in our attitudes, in our behavior, in our daily life. But bearing witness in our faith does not mean rejecting the world, because our faith, our belief are expressed and manifested as we exist in the world. There's no way we can downplay the significance of the world despite its materiality and physicality. The world, as it is physical and material, and we depend on the world for our physical and biological sustenance. And there are certainly certain aspects of the world that attracts us. However, we cannot be struck by the glitters of the world, and we cannot regard the world as the ultimate basis of human happiness, because there is a spiritual being who guides us, a real being to whom we relate. The world is not secular because of its being material or physical. It is man's attitude that has made the world secular. It is man who projected the secular ideals, and therefore it is the same man who can change it. What we need, therefore, is to take a deep look in ourselves, have a critical self-reflection, and see for ourselves the real source of our flourishing and happiness, the ultimate source of meaning and value of our life. According to St. Augustine, while we naturally fall in love with a temporal order and the material happiness, we need to realize that this is not our final destination. The ultimate end of our journey is union with God. What is needed, therefore, is to avoid the distractions of this world and focus on the final end of our journey. Thank you very much for listening.